Coming up on Network Africa. Advocacy group Human Rights Watch accuses Islamist group in Mozambique of conscripting children for attacks in the country. Ghanaian told he is not British after living for 42 years in the UK, faces 10-year settlement route. Plus, after more than a year of fighting, Sudan residents face escalating violence, famine, and threats of disease. Thanks everyone for joining us. Joke Rogers here in Lagos. Advocacy group Human Rights Watch is accusing an Islamist group of operating in Mozambique's northern Cabo Delgado province of using boys as young as 13 in attacks on the town of Macuma last week. Residents who were forced to flee the fighting say they recognized some of the child soldiers as their missing relatives. Witnesses told the rights group that dozens of child soldiers were used in the attacks and were seen carrying AK-style assault rifles and ammunition belts. Two people from the same family recognized their 13-year-old nephew among the children. The fighters looted shops and warehouses for food and exchanged fire with Mozambican and South African soldiers before retreating. At least 10 people died in the clashes and about 700 residents fled to nearby forests to escape the attacks. Al-Shabaab, which is affiliated to the Islamic State group, has previously been accused by UN agencies of kidnapping children and using them as child soldiers in its insurgency in the region, which began in 2017. A retired 74-year-old Ghanaian man who has lived in the United Kingdom for nearly 50 years has been told that he's not British. He must wait a decade before the Home Office will let him stay permanently. Nelson Shade from Wallasey in Wirral only discovered he was not a citizen in 2019, and despite paying taxes all his adult life, now faces paying thousands of pounds to stay and use the NHS. The retired news agent first came to the UK in 1977 to study accountancy on a student visa that also allowed him to work. After a coup in his native Ghana, his family could no longer send him money for his fees. He took on a series of jobs, making Mother's Pride bread and Kipling's cakes near Southampton and Bendix chocolate in Winchester. He married a British woman and moved to Wallasey to run his own business called Nelson's News. When the marriage ended, he married another British woman and they had two sons, Jacob and Aaron. Mr. Shade has performed jury service and in 2007 was given a police award for bravery after tackling a robber who was attacking a delivery man with a baseball bat. But in 2019, when he applied for a passport so he could go back to Ghana following the death of his mother, he was told he was not British and had no right to be in the UK. Let's get more on this. We're joined by Zoom by immigration lawyer Daya Fatima, who lives in the United Kingdom. Daya, great to see you today.
Oh, good afternoon. It's a pleasure being with you.
So what were your first impressions when you heard about this case?
My first impression was shock, really. Shock and the feeling that this was a very, very unfair decision taken by the Home Office. But it's not quite surprising to me that this is happening. Apart from Mr. Nelson Shade, who is actually going through this unfair decision, there are tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of immigrants who have lived in this country for so many years and who do not particularly have papers because of this kind of decision. It's quite sad, quite unfortunate that this is happening to Mr. Shade, but it's not particularly surprising. So many years ago, I think about 12 years ago, 2012, the then Home Secretary, Theresa May, abolished what used to be called the 14-year rule, and what that 14-year rule means is if you've been in the UK for 14 years and you've not renewed your papers, you could at least come forward and put in an application for leave to remain based on the fact that you've been in the UK for 14 years. That very particular rule was abolished in 2012, July 2012 by Theresa May, the then Home Secretary. And the abolition of this very particular rule, that when that rule was in place, it was in place for well over about 30 years before the abolition of that particular rule. And this abolition has now wreaked havoc on so many immigrants who have been in this country for so many years and who could not actually do anything about it. It's quite costly. The new rules put in place is now called the 20-year rule, where you need to show that you've been in the UK for 20 years. But this gentleman has been in this country for well over about 47 years, nearly 50 years. There's a rule which is normally called a discretionary rule on the part of the Home Office. And what that means is they could at least have used that discretion and looked at this man's record in the UK, the fact that he's been in the UK for more than 47 years, the fact that he's a man of good standing within community, his family, his grandchildren, they're all rooted in the UK. He's contributed taxes, paid his national insurance. That very particular discretionary rule should have allowed the Home Office, and in fact, it allows the Home Office to actually grant indefinite leave to remain based on compelling compassionate grounds. That they've not done, and that is quite unfair, really.
And where do you think Mr. Shade went wrong in his quest to stay in the UK?
Well, I'm not too clear of the very particular circumstances of Mr. Shade's case, but what I feel happened was before the rules changed in 2012, when Theresa May abolished the 14-year rule, if he had applied for leave to remain, for indefinite leave to remain in before 2012, he would have qualified for leave to remain in the UK automatically. I think where it went wrong was that he did not bother to actually make any application at all, or maybe he took it for granted that maybe that the fact that he's been in this country for well over, then he would have been in the country for I think about 37, 39 years. Maybe just took it for granted that he's British, but that wasn't the case at all. He should have made that application under the 40-year rule before that rule changed in 2019.
And can his jury service, his long stay, and the fact that he brought up two sons who are currently adults working in the UK cut short his wait? Could that be considered?
Well, that should be considered right now. After being in this country for well over about 47 years, a man of good standing, the fact that the Home Office has that discretion if they want to waive any new rules that superseded the 14-year rule. There's that discretion, there's that inherent discretion within Home Office rules and regulations to consider a matter totally outside the rules and grant leave to remain based on exceptional circumstances, compassionate exceptional circumstances like this type of case. So I feel that the Home Office should do that straight away, because what would happen is, this man's human rights, his right to private life for the last 47 years in the UK is quite a case that is very, very clear in this matter. Is the fact that he's got family life in the UK, he's lived in this country all his life, his children, he married twice, he's got children in the UK, adults, grandchildren. There's also the case he mentioned when he was appealing to everybody that in fact he buried his daughter in this country so many years ago, and his daughter's grave is in the UK. He wants to actually be where his family are, where everybody is, and is entitled to be granted this discretionary leave, which would be definitely indefinite leave to remain in the UK.
Right. Thank you, immigration lawyer Dayo Faduna. Thank you for your time today.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. I miss you just. Thank you very much.
The resident and humanitarian coordinator for Sudan, Clementine Nkweta Salami, is concerned that the people of Sudan are trapped in an inferno of brutal violence, which is spiraling out of control. She was speaking to journalists at a press conference in New York. In her update, Ms. Nkweta Salami reported clashes in Darfur, which left dozens of civilians dead. The situation is not helped by horrific rights abuses and restrictions to humanitarian aid.
After more than a year of conflict, the people of Sudan are trapped in an inferno of brutal violence. Famine is closing in. Diseases are closing in. The fighting is closing in. And there's no end in sight. Clashes over the weekend reportedly caused dozens of civilian casualties. Many more were displaced, most seeking safety in the southern part of the city. If the parties do not pull back from the brink, this will have devastating consequences for the 800,000 civilians in Al-Fasher. Right now, the humanitarian assistance they rely on can't get through. More than a dozen trucks carrying health, nutrition, and other critical supplies for more than 120,000 people have been trying to reach the city for weeks. Khartoum, the beating heart of Sudan, has been decimated. No one and nothing has been spared. Horrific atrocities are being committed with reckless abandon. Reports of rape, torture, and ethnically motivated violence are streaming in. Indiscriminate attacks are killing civilians, including young children. Sudan is now today the world's largest displacement crisis. Almost 9 million people have been forced to flee to other parts of Sudan or neighboring countries.
Still in Sudan, the UN World Food Programme, the WFP, warns that the window to save lives is closing in as famine looms in Sudan's war-torn regions, with civilians trapped by intensified fighting in northern Darfur. There are fears that the rainy season set to start in the coming month will make transport routes inaccessible, which in turn will cause famine and hunger when food stock runs out. At a meeting in Port Sudan, commitments were given that the WFP managed UN humanitarian air service could open an air bridge to Kassala from Port Sudan, which would enable it to bring additional ITC equipment to ensure connectivity for the humanitarian system in remote field locations. At least 5 million people in Sudan are on the brink of starvation. A number the WFP experts warn may have significantly increased since the last integrated phase classification assessment in December 2023.
Of course, the situation is desperate. What people want, first and foremost, is to go back home. They want this conflict to end. But of course, they need basic needs as IDPs. Food is provided to them, but still a concern. But not least, water, sanitation, and shelter is something that the IDPs have highlighted to me as I've seen them. I think on all parts, there needs to be protection of civilians, no doubt. I think that's something that has been a serious problem and continues to be a serious problem, not least right now in Al-Fasher, where fighting is raging. But we also need better access. Out of the 18 million people that we estimate are acutely food insecure, we're only able to reach maybe 25–30% of them. And among the most severe food insecure, we are not even reaching that number. And so we need a paradigm shift, really, and a step change on the level of access, or we will see a catastrophe here in Sudan. I understand from my colleagues here that there is time, but that window of opportunity is closing fast, and it's closing before the rainy season, because once the rains come, it'll be very difficult for us to move our trucks around the country. And it's also important that we, before the rains come, can provide inputs to smallholder farmers so that they can plant during that season. So I think, yes, there is a window to turn this around, but that window is closing quite rapidly at the moment.
Welcome back. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has officially signed the contentious National Health Insurance Bill into law, despite the many objections it faces from Business Unity South Africa and political parties. The piece of legislation, which has been on the president's desk since June last year, paves the way for universal access to quality healthcare in the country. The South African Communist Party, SACP, has welcomed the implementation of the NHI. Let's get more on this. We now have our South Africa correspondent, Innocent Samusa, to throw more light on issues surrounding the health bill. Hello, Innocent. Great to see you again today.
Good evening, Choki, and our viewers. It's good to see you.
Right. So if this bill is so beneficial to the people, why has it been so contentious?
Well, it has been so contentious in many forms, whereby, on the other hand, you've got political parties here in South Africa that are saying that, no, this is not possible. You're going to dent the private healthcare system. And on the other hand, you've got Business Unity South Africa that is saying, where is the money going to come from? Because essentially they believe that there is no money in the fiscus to basically fund this kind of an insurance bill. But also we heard from the Minister of Finance, that is Enoch Godongwana. He said that some of the money will come from the taxes, which means that they will now take up the taxes to essentially try, to fund this particular bill. According to President Cyril Ramaphosa, he says the National Health Insurance Bill scheme advocates to create, for the creation of a state fund to cover the medical costs of all South Africans, most of whom are not currently covered. But also it goes further to bar people from taking out private health insurance for treatment paid for by the fund. But also it's very contentious in that sense, Joke, because the issues around money, how is it going to be funded? It's really something that businesses really, they've not been happy with this particular issue. But also on the other hand, you have a political parties like the Democratic Alliance that has mentioned that they've already filed court papers to essentially go and challenge this in court. And many people have been asking themselves if whether or not this is electioneering from the African National Congress, given the fact that we're just few days to the elections. Why are they rushing to sign this now? Is it electioneering? Is it because the ANC is the governing party is losing relevance or attention? I don't know. Yeah, it's many questions that we're asking ourselves. But the president says that he's forging ahead with it, and he feels that it's something that South Africa needs, which is indeed, it's something that South Africa needs. But how is it going to be funded? That's what we're asking ourselves today, Joke.
Right, and rightly so. So in implementing this bill, how do you think, what's the president seeing? How does he feel that he's going to change the face of healthcare in South Africa?
Well, look, he says that it will fundamentally transform the country's health system by ensuring equitable access to quality healthcare services for all citizens, regardless of your socio-economic status, as I have indicated. But we do know, Joke, that for that to happen, they would have to strengthen the health system. The implementation of the NHI will require significant investment in the healthcare infrastructure, human resource. Speaking about human resource, there's been a lot of complaints from the private healthcare authorities saying that they are short-staffed, and you'd know that there are doctors that are not employed. So the government says it does not have money to employ those doctors. So it's another topic for another day, because now there's issues of human resource and there's issues of health information system where people need to understand if they have a particular issue, where to go and which hospital to visit. I think if they can strengthen the health system, this will help in strengthening the capacity and reliance of the health system to respond to current and future health challenges. But Joker, I'm just hoping that it's not going to be like COVID-19, where we've seen billions of rands, being stolen by politicians. So I'm just hoping that this will be structurally. I'm hoping that they will put structures that really favors the people, as opposed to politicians with sticky hands that can, steal the monies. I'm hoping that it's not gonna end up in that direction. But like I rightly said, that if they can strengthen the health system, I believe that's the right step in the right direction. It's a step in the right direction to essentially make sure that we realize a healthcare system in South Africa that is free and fair. Okay.
Right. Innocent, thank you for your time.
Thank you, colleague.
And back here in Nigeria, the government has recorded another milestone in its quest to fully tap its gas potential with the coming on stream of 3 critical gas infrastructure projects. Speaking virtually while inaugurating the 3 projects which took place at the AGPC gas plant in Imo State, President Bola Tinubu noted the project will significantly raise the country's gas supply and boost economic growth. The president also assured investors in the energy sector of the federal government's commitment to fostering an enabling environment for business. And still in Nigeria, former Nigerian High Commissioner to the UK and veteran broadcaster, Dr. Christopher Kolade, has convened a select gathering of minds committed to unraveling the essence of effective leadership. This assembly comprises scholars, entrepreneurs, clergy, and avid learners, all masters of their own trade. Our correspondent, Darido, reports.
Effective principles of leadership is the focus of this meeting, and Dr. Christopher Kolade is the convener. It's a small yet diverse group comprising scholars, entrepreneurs, the clergy, and others interested in learning a theme or two about leadership.
You see, let me remind all of us.
The host, Dr. Kolade, leads the park, outlining 7 principles of leadership, some of which are responsibility, exemplary leadership, building capacity to meet needs of the future, being an apostle of effective learning.
Today's discussion is not leadership in the abstract. It's not leadership only as a concept. It is leadership as it relates to our practice, our experience. So if you look at the principles that I have put in this paper, I've put 7 principles. But there is one basic principle that I want to remind all of us of. And that is that the leader himself is a member of the team. If we practice leadership which separates the leader from the team, which makes the leader preside over some concept and everybody else is just doing his will, that is a wrong concept of leadership. And I use something we all know about. A football team. If I ask you who is the leader of the football team, you point to the captain. And the captain has responsibility to make sure that something happens. The team may say we want to win or we don't want to lose. So whatever the objective is, he is leading.
And there were other perspectives from different speakers.
People what make up the success or failure of anything, and the person who is in charge recognizing that and being able to tap into it makes all the difference.
There are people who are in position of leadership and they just tell you that they don't care. Anything goes. Because we have not put that structure. You also want to ask questions. To whom are you accountable to?
Leadership comes with a lot of challenges. Even now, I think I'm work in progress. But I think that we have to continue to learn.
The chairman and CEO of Channels Media Group, Dr. John Momoh, in his submission says people must be at the heart of effective leadership at all levels.
This comes through in what we do in Channels on a daily basis. Everybody everybody is a member of the team. Everyone is very important. Everyone, whether he's a Muslim or a Christian, must always understand the fact that the work he does in channels is not unto him, but unto God. What are we there to do when we find ourselves in leadership positions? We must be there for the common good. As long as we know that it's not about enriching ourselves, it's in fact, I dare say, inconveniencing yourself or polarizing yourself, because you've got to make sure that the people are the focus of your leadership. Once we get that in Nigeria, the country will change.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me first of all give God glory for leading us to have this program and to have it successful. And also we can thank our host and key speaker, Dr. Christopher Kalade, for giving us access to his time, his expertise, and incomparable experience.
As the discourse unfolds within this circle, these principles are expected to guide a larger population beyond this gathering. Dari Idu, Channels Television News.
That's Network Africa today. Thank you for watching. I'm Joka Rogers.